Your own whisper can travel across a stone hall and find your ear from 100 feet away. This is the real magic of acoustic resonance, a phenomenon mastered by ancient builders long before the existence of modern science. By the end of this, you will understand how temples were deliberately engineered as giant musical instruments to shape human experience. We will uncover how a simple chant could be transformed into an overwhelming force, and why a specific low hum might have been the key to unlocking altered states of mind. This journey reveals a hidden layer of genius in our past, showing that these sacred spaces were designed not just to be seen, but to be heard and felt in the deepest way. What does it suggest about our ancestors that they built not only for the eyes, but for the very soul? A whisper can travel 34 meters along the curved wall of St. Paul's Cathedral, arriving at the opposite side with startling clarity. This famous London landmark gives its name to the entire phenomenon, the Whispering Gallery, but its principles are ancient. Across the world and throughout history, builders crafted spaces where sound behaves in impossible ways. In the immense hypostyle hall of Karnak in Egypt, a single voice spoken at one end of the hall can be understood perfectly at the other, a distance that should render it inaudible. Far across the Atlantic, at the Mayan site of Chichen Itza, a hand clap at the base of the pyramid of Kukulkan produces a chirping echo that eerily mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. These are not happy accidents. They represent a global footprint of acoustic intention, a recurring thread woven through disparate cultures who seemingly discovered the same profound secret. How could societies separated by oceans and millennia arrive at such similar architectural truths? This shared legacy suggests we are looking at a fundamental piece of the human relationship with the sacred, a deliberate engineering of environment to shape consciousness itself. The stage is now set to listen more closely to what these stones are trying to tell us. The magic begins with a simple physical truth. Sound is not just something we hear, it is a wave of energy moving through the air, a rhythmic pulse of compression and expansion. Every sound has a frequency which we perceive as pitch and a wavelength, the physical distance between the peaks of those waves. Now picture a child on a swing. If you push the swing at just the right moment, at the exact point in its natural rhythm, each small push adds energy and the swing goes higher and higher. This is resonance. You are matching the swing's natural frequency. Sound waves behave in exactly the same way. When a sound wave enters a space whose dimensions are mathematically aligned with its wavelength, the wave reflects back on itself, reinforcing its own energy. The peaks and troughs align perfectly, creating what physicists call a standing wave, a pattern of immense acoustic power trapped within the architecture. This is how a singer can shatter a wine glass with a sustained, precise note. The glass has a natural resonant frequency, and when the singer's voice matches it perfectly, the vibrational energy builds until the material cannot contain it. Now scale that idea up monumentally. An ancient temple with its specific length, width, height, and curvature is not a random collection of stones. It is a carefully tuned instrument, a giant stone resonator. Its dimensions are not arbitrary, they are a recipe for acoustic amplification. When a priest chanted a specific tone within that space, the sound waves would find surfaces that echoed their exact rhythm. The reflections would synchronize, building upon each other, transforming a single human voice into a layered, omnipresent force that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The whisper travels, the chant swells, not by magic but by the invisible architecture of sound. So if these spaces were designed as instruments, what music were they meant to play? Geometry is the silent language of sound. The shape of a room does not merely contain noise, it directs it, sculpts it, gives it a path to follow. Think of a perfectly circular chamber, like the immense dome of the Roman Pantheon. When a sound is produced at its very center, the waves radiate outward in all directions, striking the curved interior surface simultaneously. Because every point on that dome is equidistant from the center, the reflections all converge back at that same central spot. This creates a powerful focal point, an acoustic hotspot where a whisper can be heard with impossible clarity. It is a geometric trick of echoes, turning a vast public space into a private auditory booth for one. Now contrast that with the long, narrow corridors of an Egyptian temple, its walls perfectly parallel. Here, sound does not focus, it ricochets. A sharp handclap or spoken syllable will bounce rapidly between the hard, flat surfaces, creating a rapid series of decaying repeats known as a flutter echo. This effect can make a simple chant feel layered, urgent, as if multiple voices are speaking in quick succession from the stones themselves. Then there is the power of the pyramid. The stepped sides of structures like those at Chichen Itza or Teotihuacan are not just stairways to the sky, they are acoustic lenses. Sound traveling up these angled surfaces is reflected in a specific, diffused pattern, often creating that distinctive chirping echo that mimics a bird's call. Each geometric form, circle, rectangle, and pyramid, acts as a predictable sonic blueprint. The ancient builders were not guessing. They were applying a profound understanding that the shape of a space dictates the behavior of the voice within it. They designed not just for the eye, but for the ear, using geometry as their primary tool to orchestrate experience. So if geometry provides the map, what was the intended destination for this engineered sound? Stone is not merely a canvas for carving, it is the very instrument itself. Beyond the obvious need for permanence, the specific materials chosen by these ancient builders were critical to their acoustic design. Dense stones like granite, limestone, and certain sandstones possess a fundamental sonic property. They are exceptionally poor at absorbing sound. Think of a shout in a forest versus a shout in a cavern. The soft, porous wood and foliage of the forest soak up the sound waves, muffling them quickly. But the hard, non-porous walls of the cavern reflect the waves back, allowing them to travel and linger. The stones used in temples are like that cavern wall on a monumental scale. Their low sound absorption coefficient, a technical way of saying they do not soak up sonic energy, means they act as nearly perfect mirrors for sound. A chant or drumbeat striking these surfaces does not fade into the material. It bounces off with most of its force intact, ready to travel further and interact with other reflections. This natural property was then enhanced by human skill. The ancient craft of stonemasonry was not just about shaping blocks to fit, it was about finishing them to sing. The meticulous carving, grinding, and polishing of interior temple walls served a profound acoustic purpose. It reduced surface irregularities, smoothing the stone to a finish that minimized the scattering of sound waves. A rough, pitted surface would diffuse sound in countless chaotic directions, weakening it, but a polished surface creates a smoother, more predictable path for reflections, allowing sound energy to preserve its coherence over remarkable distances. This is why the echoing footsteps in a perfectly finished granite corridor sound so crisp and clear. The material reflects and the craftsmanship directs. Together, they transformed entire chambers into resonant chambers, where sound could circulate and build upon itself with minimal loss. The stone was not a passive building block. It was an active component in an acoustic circuit, selected and perfected to hold the voice of the sacred within its walls for as long as possible. But if the stones were the instrument and the geometry was the score, who were the musicians who understood how to play it? Beneath the sun-baked island of Malta lies a world carved from silence. The Hypogeum of Halsaflieni is not a temple built upward, but excavated downward, a labyrinth of chambers and passages hollowed from the living limestone over 5,000 years ago. Its most enigmatic space is known as the oracle chamber. This small, oval room holds a secret that turns whispers into thunder. On one wall there is a peculiar niche, a small, arched recess carved at head height. When a person speaks into this niche using a deep, male voice pitched at a specific low frequency, something extraordinary happens. The sound does not merely echo. It amplifies, swelling to fill the entire chamber with a palpable, vibrating hum that seems to emanate from the stone itself. The vibration is so powerful it can be felt in the bones, a physical resonance that transcends hearing. Modern acoustic analysis has pinpointed the magic number, a frequency around 110 Hz. This is the chamber's resonant sweet spot, the precise pitch at which the geometry and material of the room sing in unison. But this discovery leads to a deeper question. Why would Neolithic builders working with rudimentary tools go to such lengths to engineer this specific sonic effect? The answer may lie not in architecture alone, but in the human mind. Researchers have begun to explore the neurological impact of low-frequency sound. Studies suggest that sustained exposure to tones around 110 Hz can affect brain activity, potentially quieting the language centers associated with linear thought and logic, while stimulating areas linked to emotion, imagery, and spatial perception. In simpler terms, this specific hum might gently nudge consciousness toward a more dreamlike, receptive state. Suddenly, the oracle chamber transforms from an acoustic curiosity into a deliberate tool. It was not just a room for speaking, but a resonant vessel designed to alter the state of the listener. A priest or ritual participant speaking into the niche would not only project their voice throughout the complex, they would simultaneously bathe themselves and others in this mind-altering frequency. The architecture itself became an active participant in the ritual, using sound to open a doorway in perception. This 5,000-year-old example presents a staggering possibility that our ancestors understood the intimate connection between sound, stone, and spirit well before they had the words for physics or neuroscience. They built environments that could directly shape inner experience. The oracle chamber reveals a world built for inner transformation, but another ancient site shows how sound could shape an entire communal spectacle. Travel to the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, to the monumental playing field of the Great Ball Court at Chichen Itza. Stretching over 150 meters in length, with parallel walls soaring nearly 8 meters high, this space was the stage for the Mesoamerican ballgame, a ritual sport of profound spiritual and political significance. On its vast limestone surface, a remarkable acoustic phenomenon occurs. A person standing at one end of the court can speak in a normal, even hushed tone, and a listener at the opposite end, far beyond the range of ordinary conversation, will hear every word with perfect clarity. The sound does not fade or scatter, it travels. This is the work of those immense, smooth, parallel walls. They act as perfect sonic waveguides, capturing the sound waves and channeling them down the length of the court with minimal loss, a whispering gallery on a colossal, open-air scale. The architecture ensured that every chant, every command, every ritual declaration would carry to every participant and spectator, unifying the space with a shared auditory experience. But the court holds a second, more mystical secret. Stand at the precise center of the playing field and clap your hands once. The sound that returns is not a simple echo. It is a distinct, fluttering chirp that bears an uncanny resemblance to the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. In Maya cosmology, the Quetzal was a divine messenger, its feathers more precious than gold, a symbol of the sky and the breath of life itself. This was no happy accident of acoustics. Modern researchers have confirmed that the specific dimensions of the court, the distance between the parallel walls, and the angle of their slight incline are mathematically tuned to filter and shape the sound of a handclap into that precise avian cry. The smooth, hard limestone surfaces, meticulously finished, provide the reflective quality needed to produce the clear, pitched echo. This means the very act of playing the game, with the impact of the heavy rubber ball and the shouts of the players, would have been accompanied by a symphony of symbolic bird calls, as if the spirit of the Quetzal was inhabiting the court. The Great Ball Court was not just an arena, it was a resonant instrument. Its design fused sport, ritual, and profound auditory symbolism into a single, immersive experience. The architecture spoke, or rather, it sang with the voice of the sacred, turning a physical contest into a dialogue with the divine. This intentional blending of sound and meaning presents us with a clear pattern, a signature of ancient thought. But how could such precise knowledge exist without the tools of modern science? The resonant stones of the ball court and the oracle chamber point toward a unifying purpose. For the societies that built them, sound was far more than a means of conversation. It was a tangible force, a vibrational bridge between the earthly and the eternal. Chants, drumbeats, and ritual utterances were not just performances, they were vehicles believed to carry prayers directly to the ears of gods or the realm of ancestors. In this worldview, a temple that could amplify these sounds, make them linger in the air, or even generate its own unearthly hum was not a passive container. It was a living, responsive entity, a partner in the ceremony. This transforms our understanding of the acoustic design. It was not engineering for its own sake, it was sacred technology. When a priest chanted a specific tone that triggered a room's resonance, the resulting swell of sound would have been perceived as a divine affirmation, the very walls joining in the prayer. The architecture became a spiritual instrument, and the entire community became its players. Imagine the experience within a space like the Hypogeum's oracle chamber. As the low hum filled the air, vibrating through the floor and into the bones of the gathered people, the boundary between individual and group, between human voice and stone voice, would begin to dissolve. This shared sensory immersion fostered a powerful collective focus, a unified state of mind essential for ritual. The acoustic properties ensured that everyone present, from the high priest to the most distant participant, was enveloped in the same sonic atmosphere. There were no auditory bystanders. The design democratized the mystical experience, using sound to weave individual worshippers into a single, resonant body. This was the ultimate goal, to use the physics of vibration to facilitate a profound shift in consciousness, to make the felt presence of the sacred an undeniable, communal reality. The temple, therefore, was not just a place to talk about the divine. Through its engineered acoustics, it became a place to literally feel it, a machine for making the intangible tangible. If these spaces were such precise instruments, how did their builders discover the blueprints without any of our modern tools? This leads us to a profound and beautiful question. Could the very proportions of these temples be a form of frozen music? The third principle guiding these acoustic wonders points to harmonic frequencies and sacred ratios. It suggests that ancient builders may have used musical or mathematical relationships as their fundamental design template, tuning entire structures like one would tune a colossal instrument. Across many cultures, temple dimensions are not random numbers. They often correspond to simple, pleasing ratios found in nature and music. Take the famous golden ratio, often represented by the Greek letter phi, approximately 1.618. This proportion, seen in the spiral of a nautilus shell or the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, appears repeatedly in the architecture of Greek temples like the Parthenon. It is not merely an aesthetic choice. This ratio creates a sense of balanced, organic harmony that is inherently pleasing to the human eye and perhaps to the human ear. In acoustic terms, harmonic intervals are the building blocks of music. When two notes vibrate in a simple mathematical relationship, like 2 to 1 or 3 to 2, they sound consonant and stable together. Many researchers propose that the same ratios that create beautiful chords were literally built into the floor plans and elevations of sacred spaces. The space itself, therefore, resonated with these foundational harmonies. Even more intriguing is the theory surrounding a specific set of tones known as the solfeggio frequencies. These are a series of 6 notes, ut, re, mi, fa, sol, and la, used in medieval Gregorian chants. Some acoustic researchers and historians have noted that these specific frequencies, when calculated, appear to align with the resonant properties of certain ancient structures and even with concepts in historical tuning systems. The idea is tantalizing that these chants were not just sung within the walls, but were sung for the walls, their pitches deliberately chosen to activate the latent resonance of the architecture. While this remains a topic of lively debate and requires careful interpretation, the pattern is compelling. It points to a worldview where mathematics, music, and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but different expressions of the same universal order. To build a temple was to compose a symphony in stone, its dimensions setting a fundamental pitch that all ritual sound would interact with. The structure itself became a permanent keynote, a drone note upon which the temporary music of ceremony could beautifully play. If these ratios provided the theoretical blueprint, how did builders translate such precise knowledge into mountains of stone without our modern tools? The stones themselves hold the first clue to how this knowledge was gained. While we envision grand architects with perfect blueprints, the reality was likely a slow, patient process of listening and learning, repeated over generations. The earliest sacred spaces were probably natural formations, caves with unusual echoes or canyons that captured and amplified the wind. Our ancestors, deeply attuned to their environment, would have noticed these places felt different, charged with a presence that ordinary landscapes lacked. They would have returned to them, experimented with voice and rhythm, and begun to associate specific sonic properties with spiritual potency. The first built structures would have been attempts to replicate and enhance these natural acoustic wonders. This suggests the initial knowledge was not theoretical but empirical, born from a lifetime of careful observation. A builder learns that a certain curvature creates a whisper that travels, or that a specific stone type makes a drumbeat linger. This practical wisdom, refined through trial and error, was then passed from master to apprentice, becoming a protected craft secret of the Temple Builders Guild. The precision we marvel at is the accumulated intelligence of centuries, not the sudden inspiration of a single genius. But this theory of gradual mastery only takes us so far. It explains the how of refinement, but not the startling sophistication of the final product. How did they move from noticing an echo to mathematically tuning an entire chamber to 110 Hz? This gap in understanding fuels more intriguing possibilities. One compelling theory involves the use of simple yet brilliant on-site testing tools. Imagine a construction foreman in ancient Malta, watching as masons slowly carved the oracle chamber from the bedrock. How could he know when the shape was acoustically correct? He might have used a basin of water. By placing it in the niche and speaking or chanting across its surface, he could observe the patterns of ripples. Sound waves traveling through the air would disturb the water, and the clearest, most symmetrical standing waves would form only when his voice hit the precise resonant frequency of the nearly finished space. The water would become a living, visual oscilloscope. Similarly, builders might have used tuned strings or pipes of specific lengths, plucking or blowing them within the space during construction. When the note caused the air in the room to vibrate most powerfully, humming back in sympathy, they knew the dimensions were right. These are low-tech methods, but they are profoundly effective, turning the body and simple tools into precision instruments. They represent a bridge between the intuitive and the mathematical, a way to physically feel the truth of harmonic ratios. Yet for some, even this explanation feels insufficient. The global recurrence of these principles from the pyramids of Egypt to the mounds of Ireland hints at something deeper. Could there have been a shared foundational science of vibration, a forgotten branch of knowledge that understood the universe as a symphony of frequencies? Some researchers point to ancient texts and traditions that speak of the world being created through sound, of sacred syllables that hold formative power. In this view, the temples were not just designed with acoustics in mind, they were built as physical manifestations of those primordial vibrations. The architects were not merely engineers, but initiates in a spiritual technology that wove number, tone, and form into a single practice. This idea ventures into the realm of the esoteric, where the line between advanced physics and metaphysical belief blurs. It is a reminder that for these cultures, the separation we see between science and religion did not exist. To understand the resonance was to touch the divine order of things, so we are left with a spectrum of answers, from the practical water basin to the philosophical concept of a musical universe. Perhaps the true answer encompasses all of it, a fusion of meticulous observation, ingenious experimentation, and a worldview that heard the sacred in every echo. This enduring mystery does not diminish their achievement, it deepens our respect for the depth of their perception. The most vital instrument in any ancient ritual was not carved from stone, but was born from flesh and breath. A chanting priest, a drumming initiate, a chorus of worshippers, these were the living sound sources the architecture was built to receive. This reveals a profound layer of intention. These resonant chambers were not designed for arbitrary noise, but were meticulously tuned to the specific frequency range of the human voice and body. The magic number that keeps appearing, that 110 Hz hum of the oracle chamber, sits squarely within the lower register of the adult male voice. This is no coincidence, it represents a perfect alignment between biology and architecture. When a priest chanted a fundamental tone in that range, his voice would not merely be heard, it would trigger the room's natural resonance. The stone would answer back, amplifying and sustaining his vocal energy, transforming a solitary human sound into an omnipresent force that vibrated through the space and through the bodies of everyone present. The architecture literally fed the performer's voice back to him, enhanced and empowered, creating a visceral feedback loop of sound and sensation. He would feel his own voice magnified, not by his own effort but by the very temple around him. This experience of the building itself joining in and elevating the ritual sound would have been perceived as a direct communion with the divine, a physical sign that the prayer was being received and answered. But the design partnership went even deeper. Our hearing is also tuned to specific ranges, the resonant frequencies that ancient builders favored, often between 90 and 120 Hz, fall within a particularly powerful band of human auditory perception. Sounds in this range are not only heard, they are felt as a deep, physical vibration in the chest and bones. This is the realm of the ceremonial drum, the didgeridoo, the low monastic chant. These sounds bypass pure intellectual listening and speak directly to our somatic awareness, to our sense of presence and awe. A temple engineered to amplify these frequencies was, therefore, engineered to maximize a specific physiological and emotional response. It was designed to make the sacred felt in the gut as much as in the ear. This turns our understanding of these spaces inside out. The priest and the temple were not separate entities, one acting upon the other. They were a single, co-designed system. The human body, with its vocal cords and auditory senses, provided the input and the receiver. The temple, with its tuned dimensions and reflective surfaces, acted as the amplifier and the processor. One was incomplete without the other. The ritual performer was the musician, and the hall was his instrument, each crafted to unlock the full potential of the other. This synergy suggests the builders possessed an intuitive grasp of bioacoustics, understanding how sound interacts with the human form to shape consciousness. They built environments that did not just house ceremony, but that actively participated in it, using the human voice as the key to awaken the song sleeping within the stone. For centuries, the whispers in these stones were stories, passed down as legend or felt as personal awe. Today, they are becoming data. A new scientific discipline has emerged with the tools to listen to the past with unprecedented clarity: Archaeoacoustics. This field bridges the gap between ancient intuition and modern analysis, using technology to map the invisible soundscapes our ancestors engineered. Researchers no longer have to rely on anecdote. They arrive at sites like Chichen Itza or the Maltese Hypogeum with laser scanners that map every surface imperfection, creating hyper-accurate three-dimensional digital models of the spaces. Into these virtual temples they feed sound. Using specialized audio software, they can simulate the behavior of any frequency, from a low chant to a hand clap, and trace its path through the architecture with pixel-perfect precision. They can identify resonant frequencies, measure reverberation times, and visualize standing wave patterns that would be impossible to see with the naked eye. This process transforms a mysterious echo into an acoustic fingerprint, a unique and measurable signature of the space. The work of researchers like Professor David Lubman has been pivotal. He meticulously recorded and analyzed the famous chirping echo at the Pyramid of Kukulkan, demonstrating through waveform analysis that the sound was not a random artifact but a predictable, filtered reflection directly caused by the staircase's precise dimensions. Across the Atlantic, teams have descended into the subterranean chambers of Malta, using balloon pops or starter pistols to create a short, sharp impulse of sound. By recording the complex echo that follows, they capture the space's impulse response, a sonic blueprint that reveals exactly how it colors and shapes any sound made within it. This scientific approach moves us decisively from romantic speculation to verifiable fact. It provides concrete evidence that the acoustic phenomena we experience are not ghosts in the machine, but the direct result of intentional design. The data separates folklore from physics, confirming that the builders manipulated their materials and geometry to achieve specific auditory effects. We are no longer just wondering if a room was resonant. We can now know its exact resonant frequency, how long sound lingers within it, and how a human voice would have been transformed by its walls. This technological listening gives us a new language to understand the old magic, translating the felt experience of awe into graphs, numbers, and waveforms that all point to one undeniable conclusion: these were instruments of profound purpose. Symmetry offers a powerful solution to a hidden acoustic problem. In a large, open chamber, sound waves can become chaotic, reflecting off surfaces at different times and angles, creating a jumbled, muddy mess where words lose their clarity. The ancient builders understood this challenge instinctively, and their answer was to impose a rigorous order on the space. A perfectly symmetrical layout, with identical features mirrored along a central axis, creates a predictable sonic environment. When a sound is produced at the focal point of such a space, its waves travel outward in a balanced pattern, striking matching surfaces on the left and right at precisely the same moment. These synchronized reflections return to the listener's ears in a coherent, unified wave, reinforcing the original sound rather than distorting it. This is why a speaker standing at the center of a symmetrical hall can be understood with remarkable clarity, even at a distance. The architecture itself acts as a guide, funneling sound along clean, organized paths and preventing the acoustic chaos that would render ritual language incomprehensible. Symmetry, therefore, was not merely an aesthetic pursuit of balance and beauty, though it certainly was that. It was a functional acoustic strategy, a way to ensure the sacred message was delivered with precision and power, its meaning preserved from the lips of the priest to the ears of the congregation. This principle of ordered sound finds its most elegant expression in the forests of stone we know as colonnades. Walk through the ruins of a grand Greek temple, past the repeating rows of towering columns. Visually, they create a rhythm of light and shadow, a sense of majestic procession, but close your eyes and listen. Those columns are not silent sentinels, they are a sophisticated acoustic filter. A solid, flat wall would reflect sound waves back in a single, overwhelming slap, causing that muddled reverberation. The evenly spaced columns, however, break up the incoming sound energy. As sound waves pass through this rhythmic grid, they are diffracted or bent, scattering around each cylindrical stone. Higher frequencies, which give speech its crispness and clarity, are scattered more easily, preventing them from building up into a shrill echo. Meanwhile, the lower, more resonant frequencies can pass through the gaps between columns with less obstruction, carrying the foundational tone and emotional weight of a chant or melody. The colonnade acts as a natural audio processor, subtly filtering out the acoustic clutter while allowing the core of the ritual sound to travel forward. This intricate balance ensured that music and oration remained rich and full-bodied without becoming a noisy roar. The space was engineered for intelligibility, allowing complex hymns or detailed prayers to be heard and understood, word for word, note for note, by everyone present. The very rhythm of the architecture served the rhythm of the ceremony. This marriage of visual rhythm and acoustic function points to a profound holistic vision. The builders did not see a temple as a collection of separate features, a facade here, a hall there. They conceived it as a complete sensory instrument. The symmetry of the floor plan, the repetitive pulse of the columns, the polished sheen of the walls, all worked in concert toward a single goal: to shape an experience that was both seen and heard as a perfect, harmonious whole. The predictable reflection patterns created by symmetry meant that ritual performers could learn the acoustic personality of their space. They would know precisely where to stand to make their voice carry, or where a drumbeat would resonate most powerfully. This turned ceremony into a kind of choreographed performance with the building itself as a partner. Every element, from the grand axis to the smallest decorative repeat, was part of a calculated design to direct spiritual energy, manifested as sound through the community. It was architecture as a conduit, using the principles of order and repetition to transform human expression into something that felt divinely orchestrated. The stones were arranged not just to impress the eye, but to clarify the voice and focus the mind, proving once again that for these ancient cultures, beauty and function were two notes in the same sacred chord. The temple did not end at its polished walls. The ancient builders understood their sacred spaces as extensions of the living earth, and they chose their locations with a listener's ear. A cliff face was not just a dramatic backdrop, it was a colossal, natural sounding board. By positioning an open-air theater or a ceremonial platform directly before a sheer rock wall, they harnessed a simple principle. Sound waves traveling from the performers would strike the massive stone surface and reflect back toward the audience, effectively doubling the volume and creating a rich, layered auditory experience. The cliff became part of the architecture, an unmovable wall of infinite scale that ensured no chant or prayer would simply vanish into the sky. Similarly, a temple nestled within a natural canyon or bowl-shaped valley benefited from the same acoustic embrace. The surrounding slopes would catch and funnel sound, creating a natural amphitheater where a single voice could reach hundreds without strain. The environment itself was the first instrument, and the builders were its master players, selecting sites where the land was already predisposed to sing. Beyond the grand reflectors of rock, subtler environmental factors played a crucial role. Consider the profound stillness of an underground temple carved deep into bedrock. While the silence feels absolute, it is actually a perfect canvas for controlled sound. The temperature and humidity deep underground remain remarkably constant, unlike the shifting air at the surface. This stability is acoustically vital because the speed of sound changes with air temperature and moisture. In a surface temple, a morning chant might travel at a slightly different speed than an evening prayer, subtly altering its resonance. But in a subterranean chamber, the conditions are locked. Sound waves propagate with unwavering consistency, their behavior perfectly predictable every single time. This allowed for an incredible precision in design. A builder could tune a chamber knowing the acoustic properties would not drift with the seasons or the hour. The Earth provided not only the material, but also a controlled laboratory environment where sonic experiments could achieve reliable, repeatable results. This deep observation extended to the very air they breathed. Skilled ritualists and temple guardians would have been keenly aware of how their sacred space breathed with the world around it. They likely knew that wind moving across a temple's entrance or through specially designed conduits could modulate a steady tone, creating a natural, ethereal drone as if the earth itself were sighing. They would have recognized how the acoustics of an open courtyard shifted between the cool, dense air of dawn and the warm, rippling air of midday, choosing specific times for ceremonies when the sound would carry with the greatest clarity and impact. Every element, from the grand topography to the whisper of the wind, was a variable in their acoustic equation. They did not fight their environment, they listened to it, learned from it, and then ingeniously wove its properties into their architectural plans. The temple was not an imposition upon the landscape, but a collaboration with it. The builders were tuning not just stones, but an entire slice of the world, creating a resonant system where culture and nature vibrated in harmony. This holistic vision suggests their goal was not merely to build a structure, but to activate a place, to identify a location already humming with potential, and then refine it into a perfect instrument for human expression and connection. The echo of the oracle chamber eventually faded, and the ball court fell silent, but the knowledge of resonant stone was never truly lost. Centuries later, on the plains of southern India, a new testament to this ancient science rose from the earth. The Gumbaz mausoleum, completed in the middle of the 17th century, stands as a monumental whisper from the more recent past. Its central dome is a marvel of engineering, one of the largest ever built without any supporting pillars. But the true wonder of Gumbaz is not just in its silent, soaring architecture, but in the very specific way it was designed to speak. Encircling the interior base of that immense dome is a narrow, circular gallery, a stone walkway suspended high above the floor. This is the mausoleum's legendary whispering gallery. Step onto that walkway, face the curved wall, and utter the softest secret. Your whisper will not die. Instead, it will embark on a journey, traveling along the smooth, concave surface of the perfect hemisphere. It will circulate not once or twice, but a documented 7 times around the entire circumference before its energy is finally absorbed by the air. A conversation held at a normal volume on one side of the gallery is heard with perfect clarity on the opposite side, over 40 meters away, as if the speakers were standing side by side. The acoustic secret here is beautifully pure geometry. The dome is not just large, it is a mathematically precise hemisphere. This shape, combined with the circular gallery that traces its base, creates a continuous, unbroken path for sound waves. When a whisper is produced against the wall, the sound skims along the curved surface, trapped by the physics of the dome's curvature. It cannot escape inward or outward, so it simply continues its loop, a sonic runner on a circular track, losing only a tiny bit of energy with each lap. This is not a mysterious, esoteric effect, but a stunningly clear demonstration of acoustic principles that earlier cultures understood intuitively. Because Gumbaz was built in a more documented era, we have clearer historical records of its construction. We know the names of its architects and the patronage of the Sultan who commissioned it. This clarity offers us a priceless key. It shows us that the sophisticated acoustic manipulation seen in much older, more enigmatic sites was not a forgotten art, but a persistent thread in architectural wisdom. The builders of Gumbaz were working from a living tradition, applying a refined understanding of sound reflection that had been passed down and perfected over millennia. Studying this 17th-century masterpiece, with its well-documented origins, allows us to reverse engineer the thinking behind places like the Hypogeum or Chichen Itza. It provides a clearer blueprint for how intentional such designs were. The Whispering Gallery proves that creating these phenomenal spaces was a matter of precise calculation and deliberate craft, not mystical accident. It stands as a bridge in time, a later, well-lit chapter that helps us read the earlier, more shadowy ones. It confirms that the desire to shape sound to make architecture sing is a timeless human pursuit. This brings us to the most intimate frontier of this mystery, the human mind itself. What actually happens to consciousness inside a perfectly resonant chamber? Modern research offers a fascinating glimpse. Brainwave activity is categorized into different states, from the fast, busy beta waves of our alert, waking life, to the slower, more rhythmic alpha waves associated with relaxed focus, and further into the even slower theta waves, which emerge in deep meditation, hypnosis, and the dream state. Studies using electroencephalogram or EEG monitoring have observed something remarkable. When test subjects are exposed to sustained low-frequency sound, particularly in that crucial range around 110 Hz, their brainwave patterns often show a measurable shift. The dominant beta activity can decrease, while alpha and sometimes theta activity increases. In simpler terms, the brain begins to quiet its chatter, its analytical, language-based processing, and moves toward a more receptive, inwardly focused, and imagery-rich state. This is not a theory of magic, but a documented neurological response to a specific physical stimulus, vibration. Now, place that scientific finding back into the oracle chamber. A ritual participant, already in a state of expectation, hears and feels that deep, swelling hum. The sound is not just in their ears, it vibrates through their ribcage, their spine, the very floor beneath them. This multisensory bombardment, this physical resonance, could act as a gentle but powerful driver, nudging the brain across a threshold. The effect would be a profound alteration of subjective experience. The feeling might be described as awe, a sense of vastness and connection that diminishes the individual self. It could feel like transcendence, a lifting of ordinary concerns. For some, it might facilitate a trance state where the boundaries between self, community, and the divine become beautifully blurred. This transforms our understanding of the architecture completely. The temple was far more than a backdrop for ritual. It was an active participant, a sophisticated technology of consciousness. The priests and builders were not just creating a space for talking about the gods, they were engineering an environment that could directly induce the feeling of being in their presence. Sound was their most precise tool. By tuning the stones to amplify the frequencies that our neurology is most susceptible to, they built a machine for transformation. The ceremony provided the intention and the narrative, but the resonant chamber provided the physiological key, unlocking a door in the mind that logic alone could not open. This was sacred science in its most potent form, using an understanding of physics to facilitate a metaphysical experience, making the spiritual not just a belief, but a bodily, undeniable reality. The stones were not the only place these cultures recorded their acoustic discoveries. Their stories hold the echoes, too. Across the ancient world, mythology and legend became the language for explaining the unexplainable, turning the mysterious behaviors of sound into the deeds of gods and spirits. Take the Greek tale of the nymph Echo, cursed by the goddess Hera to only repeat the last words spoken to her. Echo is a beautiful personification of the acoustic reflection that fascinated the Greeks in their own amphitheaters and temples. She is not just a character, she is a phenomenon given a name and a face, a way to understand why a shout returns from a mountainside. This narrative instinct reveals a profound truth. Our ancestors experienced these acoustic effects as active, almost intelligent forces in their world, and their stories sanctified that experience. In the ancient Sanskrit texts of India, this idea reaches its philosophical zenith with the concept of Nada Brahma, the world as sound vibration. This is not merely a metaphor. It is a foundational cosmological principle stating that the entire universe, from the sweep of the stars to the pulse of a heartbeat, is a manifestation of primal sonic energy. Creation itself begins with a sacred syllable, Am, a resonant tone that sets existence into motion. Within this worldview, the resonant frequencies of a temple are far more than clever engineering. They are direct echoes of that first creative vibration, a way to tap back into the fundamental hum of reality. The architecture becomes a tool for realigning human consciousness with the cosmic order, with sound as the bridge. When a priest chanted in a tuned hall, he wasn't just performing a ritual, he was participating in the ongoing act of creation, using his voice to harmonize with the frequency of the divine. This perspective transforms every mysterious echo from a quirk of physics into a potential divine message. Consider the many global legends of oracles who spoke from stones or fissures in the earth, like the famous Oracle of Delphi. Historical accounts describe a priestess, the Pythia, entering a trance state to deliver prophecies, often in a strange, riddling voice. While geological theories about intoxicating vapors exist, the acoustic environment must have played a critical role. A chamber beneath the temple, a natural fissure, or the specific geometry of the space could have created unusual reverberations, distorting the Pythia's voice or amplifying certain tones. To the seekers who heard her, that altered, resonant voice would not have sounded human. It would have been the stone itself speaking, the god Apollo using the architecture as a vocal filter. The legend was the interpretation of the acoustic effect, a story crafted to explain why the voice from that particular place sounded so otherworldly and carried such authority. Similarly, stories of gods answering prayers from temple walls or statues that whispered likely stem from the same source, the awe-inspiring and seemingly intelligent behavior of reflected sound. A worshipper praying aloud in a resonant corridor might hear their own words come back to them a moment later, softened and diffused as if from a great distance. In the solemn, expectant silence of a sacred space, that returning echo could easily be perceived as a distant, divine reply. The culture, steeped in a belief that the gods were present and listening, naturally interpreted the physics as presence. The architecture, engineered to capture and return sound, made that belief feel physically real. The myth was not a replacement for the acoustic phenomenon. It was its meaning, the narrative layer that told people how to feel about what they were hearing. These stories were the user manual for the sacred technology, teaching generations that a returning whisper was not an empty echo, but a sign that the walls were alive with listening. We must also listen for what is missing. The profound silence that wrapped the ancient world was itself a key ingredient in this acoustic alchemy. Our modern ears are conditioned by a relentless background symphony of noise, the distant hum of traffic, the electronic buzz of appliances, the constant murmur of human activity. This ambient sound floor is so pervasive we often stop hearing it, but it acts as an acoustic curtain, masking the subtle vibrations and delicate echoes that define a resonant space. For the people who walked these temple floors millennia ago, the auditory landscape was fundamentally different. Their daily lives, especially in sacred precincts set apart from bustling marketplaces, were punctuated by stretches of deep, natural quietude, broken only by the wind, distant animal calls, or the purposeful sounds of ritual. This baseline of silence was not an empty void but a pristine canvas. It meant that even the faintest acoustic phenomenon, a whisper skimming a curved wall or the softest breath of a low chant, would stand out with crystalline clarity. The architecture did not have to compete. A subtle echo that we might strain to hear today over the whir of a ventilation system would have arrived at their ears as a distinct, undeniable event, a voice from the stones themselves. This quietude transformed the experience from an interesting acoustic trick into a visceral, spiritual encounter. When a priest initiated a tone in that silent hall, the resulting resonance did not blend into background noise. It bloomed into the emptiness, filling the sensory field completely. The contrast between the preceding silence and the sudden swell of sound would have been emotionally overwhelming, a dramatic revelation that felt divinely orchestrated. The silence itself became part of the ritual's power, a collective, focused listening that heightened every participant's sensitivity. In our attempts to study these spaces today, we face a fundamental challenge. We can measure their resonant frequencies and map their echo patterns in a controlled setting, but we can almost never experience them as their builders intended. The world outside the temple walls is no longer quiet. Even in remote archaeological sites, the buzz of modern life often intrudes. This means the most dramatic effects, those that rely on the contrast between utter stillness and orchestrated sound, are lost to us. We are trying to hear a whisper in a storm. To truly appreciate the intended impact, we must mentally strip away the noise of centuries and picture a world where the only sounds that mattered were the ones the architecture was designed to create and carry. That sacred silence was the final, essential element, the breath before the note, that allowed the temple's song to be heard in all its transformative power. Every alcove and archway in these ancient temples was more than decoration. It was a finely tuned component in a grand acoustic instrument. To truly understand the genius at work, we need to look closer at the specific architectural features that acted as deliberate sound modifiers. Think of a deeply recessed niche carved into a temple wall. To our eyes, it might simply hold a statue or a lamp, but to the physics of sound, that enclosed cavity can function as what is known as a Helmholtz resonator. Named for the 19th century physicist who described it, this is essentially an acoustic filter. When sound waves enter the opening of the niche, the air inside the cavity vibrates at its own natural frequency. If the incoming sound matches that frequency, the energy is absorbed and trapped within the cavity, effectively removing that specific pitch from the room's reverberation. This is not a flaw, it is a tool. By carving niches of precise volumes and opening sizes, ancient builders could selectively dampen problematic frequencies that caused muddiness or harsh echoes, subtly tuning the overall sonic character of the hall. They were actively sculpting the soundscape, removing acoustic clutter to ensure the clarity of ritual chants and music. The shape of the ceiling held equal power. In Mayan architecture, the distinctive corbelled arch, created by stacking stones so each course slightly overhangs the one below until they meet at the top, does more than support weight. Its jagged, stepped interior surface creates a complex web of sound reflections. Unlike a smooth, curved dome that sends echoes to a single focal point, a corbelled arch scatters sound waves in numerous, overlapping directions. This diffusion prevents loud, focused echoes that could drown out speech, instead creating a rich, enveloping reverberation that fills the space with a sense of immersive presence. The sound does not come from one place, it seems to emanate from everywhere, wrapping the listener in a blanket of auditory warmth. This was a deliberate choice, using structure to shape sensation. Even the texture of the walls played a critical role. A perfectly smooth, polished limestone surface acts like an acoustic mirror, reflecting sound waves in a clean, predictable direction. This is ideal for creating those long, carrying whispers and clear focal points. but sometimes a builder wanted to soften the sound to prevent it from being too sharp or overwhelming. In these cases, they might leave sections of the wall intentionally rough or cover them with intricate, repetitive carvings. These textured surfaces break up incoming sound waves, scattering their energy in countless tiny reflections. This diffusion mellows the acoustics, reducing harsh echoes and creating a softer, more blended auditory environment, perfect for meditation or layered musical performance. The very feel of the stone, therefore, was an acoustic decision. From the macro scale of a dome to the micro detail of a carving, nothing was left to chance. Each pillar in a colonnade was not just a support, it was a scatterer of high frequencies. Every strategic alcove was a potential resonator, fine-tuning the room's bass response. Every choice of material and finish was a calculation about reflection and absorption. These builders were not merely constructing shelters, they were assembling a sophisticated, stone-made soundboard. Each element was a device in a grand auditory circuit, carefully arranged to receive the human voice and return it transformed, clarified, and amplified. This holistic approach reveals a depth of planning that rivals any modern concert hall, proving that the pursuit of perfect sound is a timeless human endeavor, etched not in wire and circuitry, but in limestone and granite. The precision of these stone instruments points toward a hidden network of minds. How did such specific knowledge of resonance and ratio appear in cultures separated by vast oceans and centuries? This suggests a shared, or at least a parallel, journey of discovery, one that may have followed the hidden trade routes of ideas rather than goods. In the ancient Mediterranean, we find traces of organized brotherhoods dedicated to this very craft. The Dionysian artificers, a legendary guild of architects and engineers, were said to possess secret knowledge of sacred geometry and acoustics, which they applied to the construction of theaters and temples. Their methods were not public textbooks, but closely guarded oral traditions, passed from master to apprentice in a chain of trust that could span generations. This model of the secretive guild is a powerful one. It explains how complex empirical knowledge could be preserved and refined over long periods without widespread written records. The medieval cathedral builders operated under a similar veil of mystery, their geometric secrets encoded in the stonework itself, accessible only to those initiated into the craft. The knowledge was a form of power, and its protection was paramount. This raises a haunting possibility. What if the most complete understanding of this sacred science was once recorded, only to vanish? The Great Library of Alexandria stands as the ultimate symbol of lost knowledge, a repository that gathered the intellectual wealth of the ancient world. While we have no specific scroll that details temple acoustics, it is entirely plausible that treatises on harmonic proportion, architectural mathematics, and the philosophy of sound were among its countless volumes. The library's destruction represents more than the burning of papyrus. It was the severing of a global nerve of understanding. With it, entire schools of thought, refined over millennia, may have faded into fragments and folklore. Yet the transmission of ideas is resilient. Knowledge also traveled silently with the movement of people. Conquerors absorbed the architectural wisdom of the civilizations they overtook, as the Romans did with the Greeks. Pilgrims journeying to sacred sites would have carried back not just spiritual inspiration, but observations about the awe-inspiring sound in those foreign temples. Merchants trading along the Silk Road or sea routes might have exchanged tales of whispering walls and echoing courtyards, planting seeds of curiosity in distant lands. This could lead to independent parallel discovery, where different cultures, observing the same natural principles of sound reflection in caves or canyons, arrived at similar architectural solutions. The recurring use of specific ratios like the golden section across disparate cultures hints at this, a universal human recognition of certain patterns as inherently harmonious, whether seen in a seashell, heard in a musical interval, or built into a temple's floor plan. The story, then, is not of a single lost manual, but of a fragile tapestry woven from many threads, guild secrets, lost libraries, silent observation, and the slow, patient exchange of wonder. Some threads were cut, leaving gaps in our understanding, while others were woven into new patterns in different times and places. The resonant stones that remain are the enduring knots in that tapestry, holding fast a wisdom that was too profound to be entirely forgotten. Stone reflects, but water listens. This introduces a sixth, more subtle principle in the ancient acoustic design, the deliberate use of water as a tuner of sound. While we have focused on how hard surfaces amplify and direct sound, the builders also understood its opposite, absorption, and for that, they turned to one of the most fundamental elements of life. Water is a remarkable acoustic dampener, especially for higher frequencies. The sharp, hissing consonants of speech, the ringing overtones of a metal instrument, these are the sounds that water eagerly soaks up. Imagine the difference between shouting in a bare stone room and shouting in a room with a large, still pool. In the first, your voice rings and lingers. In the second, it feels warmer, rounder, the edges softened. This was not a detail lost on the temple architects. Many sacred complexes integrated water features not solely for practical or symbolic purification, but as a functional component of their soundscape. Consider the ritual pools found in sites from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, or the channels that once carried water through certain Roman temples and Minoan palaces. These were not just decorative. By strategically placing a body of water within a resonant stone hall, the builders introduced a powerful acoustic filter. The water would absorb those problematic high-frequency echoes that could make a space sound harsh, chaotic, or muddy when many people were present. It would subtly strip away the acoustic clutter, leaving the lower frequencies to dominate. The result was a sonic environment that felt profoundly different, warmer, more immersive, and focused on the powerful bass tones that vibrate in the chest. This interplay between reflective stone and absorptive water gave the architects a dynamic tool for fine-tuning. They could, in essence, sculpt the reverberation time and tonal quality of a space. A hall with a central pool would have a shorter, drier echo than an identical hall without one, making spoken rituals more intelligible. Yet, because the low frequencies from chants or drums were less affected, the space would retain its feeling of deep, resonant power. The water removed the harshness but preserved the awe. It allowed for clarity of word and melody, while maintaining the overwhelming somatic impact of the sacred hum. This reveals a layer of sophistication that moves beyond simple amplification into the realm of acoustic engineering. The builders were not just creating loud spaces, they were crafting specific auditory experiences. They used water to balance the bright, reflective qualities of stone, ensuring that the sound within their temples was not just powerful, but also clear, warm, and perfectly suited to the emotional goals of the ceremony. The sacred space became a blend of elements, earth and water working in concert to shape the air itself, proving that every feature, even the still surface of a pool, was part of the instrument. The ultimate test of any theory is not just to observe, but to build, to move from interpreting ancient blueprints to actually raising the stones. Modern researchers have turned to experimental archaeology. This is the hands-on science of reconstruction, where scholars and craftsmen attempt to recreate the past using only the tools and methods that would have been available at the time. In the realm of acoustics, this approach is revolutionary. It asks a simple, profound question: can we, today, build a space that sings as theirs did, using only their knowledge? Projects around the world are now attempting exactly that, turning speculation into something you can stand inside and hear for yourself. one of the most ambitious efforts focuses on perhaps the most iconic ancient structure of all, Stonehenge. The Archaeoacoustics of Stonehenge project, led by researchers from the University of Salford, did not involve moving 80-ton sarsen stones. Instead, they took a meticulous two-step approach. First, they used advanced laser scanning to create a perfect digital model of the entire site as it stands today, complete with every erosion, every missing stone, every subtle angle. Into this virtual Stonehenge, they fed sound, simulating everything from simple speech to complex ritual drumming. The digital model allowed them to map sound pathways and identify potential resonant behaviors with incredible precision, a process impossible to conduct on the fragile, protected site itself. But the virtual world was only the beginning. The team then did something wonderfully tangible. They built a physical scale model, constructed at a precise 1:12 scale in a specialized acoustic chamber. This miniature Stonehenge used every measurement from the digital scan. By emitting high-frequency sounds within the model, which scale up to lower, audible frequencies in the full-sized original, they could effectively listen to what the complete circle might have sounded like 4,000 years ago. The results were startling. The research suggested that the original, complete circle of stones, with its carefully placed lintels forming a continuous ring atop the uprights, would have acted as a massive sound reflector. Sound produced within the circle would have been largely contained, bouncing between the hard stone surfaces and creating a sustained, reverberant environment ideal for rhythmic music and chant, while sounds from outside would have been noticeably muted. This points to an intentional acoustic design, a space engineered not just for ceremony, but for focused, immersive sonic experience. Beyond high-tech models, other experiments use the most ancient tools of all, human hands and replicated technology. Enthusiasts and researchers have attempted to construct smaller-scale trilithons, the iconic 2 uprights and a lintel unit, using only ropes, wooden sledges, and earthen ramps. The goal is not just to see if it can be done, but to understand the choices made during construction. How did the shaping of a stone surface, achieved through patient pounding with stone mauls, affect its sound-reflective properties? Would a builder stop pounding when the stone was structurally sound, or would they continue to a finer finish specifically to smooth an acoustic reflection? These experiments in physical labor reveal the intimate relationship between craft and effect. Each decision in the building process, from selecting a stone with a particular density to the final polishing of its interior face, was a step in tuning the final instrument. When a researcher spends weeks shaping a block with a replica stone tool, they begin to understand the acoustic consequences of that labor in a way no computer model can convey. They feel the difference a smoother surface makes, not just to the eye but to the ear. This shift from passive observation to active reconstruction is crucial. It moves us beyond wondering if an acoustic phenomenon was intentional, and into the realm of testing whether it was repeatable. If a team using only Neolithic tools and techniques can build a scale model that demonstrates predictable acoustic effects, it becomes powerful evidence for applied knowledge. It suggests the original builders were not just lucky, but that they could reliably reproduce their results, the hallmark of a mastered craft. These experiments bridge the gap between the mysterious monument and the minds that conceived it. They allow us to walk, in a sense, alongside the ancient engineers, listening for the moment when the stones begin to answer back, confirming that the song was always part of the plan. Yet a quiet but persistent question lingers in these resonant halls. Could we be hearing only what we want to hear? Within the academic world, a healthy debate challenges the very premise of intentional acoustic design. Skeptical scholars offer a crucial counterpoint, reminding us that our modern fascination with sound science might color our interpretation of the past. They propose the cultural bias argument. We live in an era of concert halls with engineered acoustics and surround sound systems. so we naturally listen for sophisticated audio design in ancient spaces. But what if, for the original builders, the primary concerns were purely structural stability, symbolic geometry, or simply creating an imposing visual spectacle? In this view, the remarkable acoustics might be a fortunate byproduct, an emergent property of building large, ceremonial spaces with hard, durable materials. If you enclose a big volume with stone, some interesting echoes are bound to happen, whether you plan for them or not. This perspective urges caution, asking us to separate compelling evidence from compelling stories. It points to cases where acoustic effects seem more coincidental than crafted. For instance, many medieval cathedrals have long reverberation times, making choral music sound magnificent. Yet, historical building records often focus on architectural grandeur and religious symbolism, with little mention of tuning for sound. The awe-inspiring acoustics may be a happy accident of a design meant primarily to reach toward the heavens visually, not sonically. This skeptical lens is not a dismissal, but a call for rigorous methodology. It demands that the field of archaeoacoustics hold itself to the highest standards. Anecdotes of feeling a strange energy or hearing a faint whisper are not enough. The evidence must be measurable, repeatable, and directly linked to specific design choices that cannot be explained by structural necessity alone. Did the builders deviate from the simplest construction method to achieve an acoustic effect? Can we find patterns where certain resonant features appear repeatedly across a culture's sacred sites, while their domestic buildings lack them? This rigorous scrutiny is what turns an intriguing possibility into a supported theory. It forces researchers to ask harder questions. When we hear a beautiful echo in a ruin, are we listening to the ghost of an intention, or are we simply in a big, empty stone room? This debate is not a roadblock, but an essential part of the journey, ensuring that the whispers we recover from the past are truly those of the builders and not merely the echo of our own assumptions. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for this shared intuition is found in our very beginnings. Long before the first stone was quarried or the first column raised, humanity's original sacred spaces were not built at all, they were discovered. Caves, those deep, winding arteries of the earth, offered more than shelter. Their dark chambers held a profound mystery, the power of the echo. A single shout in that subterranean silence would return, transformed from multiple unseen directions, a chorus of stone voices answering the human one. This experience would have been deeply unsettling and spiritually potent. It suggested the cave was alive, listening, and capable of speech. The first rituals likely unfolded in these natural resonators, where the very act of chanting or drumming created an immersive, participatory soundscape that felt like communion with the earth itself. The impulse to build temples, then, may have begun as an attempt to recreate and control this powerful, natural phenomenon. The goal was not to invent a new experience, but to capture the old one, to bring the echoing voice of the mountain into the heart of the community. This shared starting point, the resonant cave, provides a common origin story for sacred architecture across the globe. From the painted caves of Lascaux to the oracle caves of Delphi, the pattern is clear. Humans sought out places where sound behaved in supernatural ways and then learned to build their own. This journey from cave to cathedral reveals a universal grammar of sacred sound. While the specific gods, chants, and architectural styles differed wildly from the Andes to the Indus Valley, the underlying acoustic principles they employed show a remarkable convergence. A culture in India building a temple with a long, reverberant corridor to amplify Vedic chants was solving the same acoustic puzzle as a culture in Central America, constructing a ball court to channel ritual shouts. They were both using parallel walls of hard stone to guide sound. A builder smoothing the interior of a Maltese Hypogeum was pursuing the same clarity of reflection as a mason polishing the granite blocks of an Egyptian sanctuary. They both understood that a smoother surface meant a purer echo. This convergence suggests that the relationship between sound, space, and spirit is not a cultural invention, but a human discovery, like the control of fire or the invention of the wheel. Different cultures, observing the same laws of physics in their own environments, independently arrived at similar architectural conclusions because the laws themselves are universal. The echo in a canyon teaches the same lesson in Peru as it does in Tibet. The desire to harness that power for the sacred appears to be a fundamental human response. What were they all trying to achieve? Beneath the diversity of ritual, a common purpose emerges to make the intangible tangible. In every corner of the ancient world, the divine was conceived as a presence, a force that was real but beyond ordinary perception. Sound, especially resonant, amplified sound, provided a direct line to that presence, a chant that swelled to fill a hall, seeming to come from the walls themselves, felt like the voice of a god joining in. A low hum that vibrated in the chest was physical proof of a spiritual force at work. The architecture became a transducer, converting human expression into an experience of the numinous. It democratized the mystical, ensuring that everyone present, from the high priest to the humble farmer, could feel the same vibrational awe, woven together into a single resonant body by the shared sound. This was not about dogma or complex theology, it was about shared sensation. The temple, through its acoustics, engineered a collective emotional and physiological state, a feeling of connection to something vast and eternal. That longing for connection, and the intuitive understanding that sound could forge it, appears to be a universal strand in the human spirit. These silent stones, scattered across continents, are therefore monuments to a common auditory heritage. They are not just relics of dead religions or displays of forgotten power. They are a global chorus, each one singing a variation on the same profound theme, that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world, and that by shaping sound we can shape our own consciousness. The Mayan ball court, the Maltese Hypogeum, the Greek theater, and the Gothic cathedral all speak this same silent language. They tell us that our ancestors, in their search for the divine, were also mapping the intimate connection between physics and feeling, between the resonance of a room and the resonance of the human heart. Their legacy is a reminder that before we ever wrote a creed or codified a belief, we first listened to the world, heard it answer back, and in that echo, found the first notes of the sacred. The sun itself may have been the final tuner of the sacred soundscape. Beyond the geometry of stone lies the geometry of the sky, a seventh principle that ties the temple to the cosmos. Many ancient sites are famously aligned with celestial events, their doorways framing the sunrise on a solstice or their corridors pointing toward a significant star. This pursuit of heavenly alignment is well documented, but a fascinating question arises. Did these celestial moments also have an acoustic dimension? The idea ventures into speculative but compelling territory, where the fields of archaeoacoustics and archaeoastronomy converge. It suggests the perfect ritual moment was not just a date on a calendar, but a precise convergence of light, sound, and architecture. Consider the basic physics of how sound travels through air. The speed and path of sound waves are not constant. They are subtly influenced by temperature and air density. On a typical day, the air near the ground is warmer than the air above, causing sound waves to bend upward, which can limit how far they carry. But during a specific celestial event, like a solstice sunrise, the conditions might shift uniquely. As the first rays of the sun strike a temple's facade at a precise, low angle, they could create a rapid and localized heating of the stone and the air directly in front of it. This sudden temperature gradient might temporarily alter the atmosphere's acoustic properties, potentially bending sound waves in a different way, perhaps allowing them to travel further or focus more sharply within the ceremonial space. At a site like Newgrange in Ireland, where the winter solstice sunlight dramatically illuminates an inner chamber, one wonders if the quality of sound within that chamber also transformed during those precious minutes. The rising sun would warm the ancient, moisture-laden stones, possibly changing their reflective characteristics minutely, while the shaft of light itself, filled with dancing dust, would visually trace the path that sacred sound was meant to follow. The ritual would become a full sensory symphony, light and vibration rising together. This theory proposes that the architects were engineering for a transient, perfect moment. They built a structure aligned not just to capture a beam of light, but to activate under specific atmospheric conditions that also optimized sound. The sacred time, therefore, was also the acoustically ideal time. A chant offered at the solstice dawn might have carried with a clarity and resonance impossible to achieve on any other day of the year. The ceremony would harness a fleeting alignment of earth, sky, and physics, making the divine presence feel not only visible in the light but audible in the air. It frames the temple as a kind of cosmic instrument, tuned to play its most powerful note only when the heavens themselves were in the correct position. While evidence here is more interpretive, the underlying logic is profound. It reflects a worldview where every element was connected. The stones were aligned to the stars, and the sound within those stones was shaped by the sun. This holistic vision sought to synchronize human ritual with the grand mechanics of the universe, using architecture to create moments where the boundary between the earthly and the celestial did not just seem thin, it resonated. The very resonance that defines these temples is a whisper on the wind, a delicate balance easily broken. The acoustic properties that survived for millennia are now facing modern threats that risk silencing them forever. This is a race not just to preserve stone, but to preserve sound. The first threat comes from the best of intentions, restoration. When a temple wall is repaired or a floor is replaced, the choice of material is everything. Using modern concrete or a type of stone with a different density and porosity can dramatically change how sound reflects. A patch of concrete on an ancient limestone wall acts like an acoustic blind spot, absorbing frequencies the original stone would have mirrored, subtly deadening the space's vibrant echo. It is like replacing a single string on a centuries-old violin with one made of a different material. The instrument may look whole, but its song is forever altered. Then there is the constant hum of the present, the low roar of nearby traffic, the chatter of crowds, the buzz of electronic equipment. This modern noise floor acts as an acoustic curtain, smothering the subtle whispers and delicate reverberations these spaces were designed to produce. A phenomenon that would have been startlingly clear in ancient silence becomes inaudible, lost beneath the weight of our own world. Environmental damage compounds the issue. Centuries of water seepage, salt crystallization, and air pollution can slowly erode and pit once smooth stone surfaces. This microscopic roughening scatters sound waves chaotically, degrading the precise, clean reflections the builders engineered. The temple's voice grows hoarse and faint. Recognizing this fragility, a new kind of preservation has emerged, one that seeks to archive not just the physical structure, but its intangible acoustic soul. Teams of researchers are now entering these sites with a mission to capture their sonic fingerprint before it changes further. They use a technique called impulse response recording. A starter pistol's crack or a balloon's pop creates a short, sharp sound that contains all frequencies. Dozens of microphones, strategically placed throughout the space, record the complex tapestry of echoes that follows, how the room colors and shapes that initial impulse. This data is a sonic blueprint. When combined with a laser-scanned three-dimensional model of the architecture, it allows for the creation of a perfect digital twin, not just in appearance but in sound. This virtual temple can be explored with headphones, letting anyone, anywhere, experience its acoustic properties as they exist at this moment in time. More than a novelty, this is a vital scientific record. It means that even if a restoration project inadvertently alters the acoustics, or if environmental decay continues, the original sonic character of the space is saved for future study. It allows researchers 50 or 100 years from now to conduct virtual acoustic experiments we cannot yet imagine. These digital archives are becoming the libraries of ancient sound, safeguarding the voices of stones that may one day fall silent. They ensure that the profound question of how these spaces were meant to be felt, not just seen, remains a question we can still ask and still hear answered. From the whispered secrets in Maltese tombs to the Quetzal's call on a Mayan ball court, this quest reveals a hidden layer of human genius. We have been listening to builders who were not merely stacking stones, but who were master physicists and intuitive psychologists, sculpting air and sound with geometry and granite. They understood that the space between walls was as important as the walls themselves, that the echo was not a ghost but an instrument. Their temples were not silent monuments, they were instruments of consciousness, designed to transform a simple chant into an overwhelming force and a low hum into a doorway of the mind. This was architecture that sings, where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual dissolves into a single, reverberant chord. These resonant halls stand as a testament to a universal human discovery, that by shaping our environment, we can shape our very perception of reality. They remind us that our ancestors sought connection not only through sight and story, but through the visceral, vibrational language of sound. As we step back into our own noisy world, let the enduring echo of these temples linger. Let it remind us of the profound and often forgotten connections between what we build, what we hear, and what we believe. The stones may be silent now, but their song, once heard, changes how we listen to history forever. If this exploration resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. For more journeys into history's greatest mysteries, be sure to subscribe.